lots of things, making friends, eating some good food. So our last speaker today, our afternoon keynote, is Johnny Christmas. Johnny Christmas is a predominant personality in the information security community, most well known for his work on the TSA Master Key Links between 2014 and 2018. He is currently seeking new opportunities, but was most recently working with the Australian firm Casada to defend against the automated abuse of web infrastructure. Previously, he was the lead consultant on Uptake's industrial cybersecurity platform. And prior to this, he spent many years in the field as a pen tester, focusing heavily on both IT and physical security of financial and medical facilities. Let's welcome Johnny Christmas.
You guys hear me okay? Okay, did I get way louder than this? So thanks for having me. I love speaking with ISSA events because I'm a hacker, and the ISSA is always looking to bridge that gap between the boots on the ground, street hacker folk, and those who are working in the corporate sectors trying to defend against us street hacker folk. Keynotes are a weird business. It's our job as keynote presenters to set the tone for the day, or sometimes for the entire conference, depending on when that keynote is going on. We as keynote speakers have to craft something very targeted for the audience that's going to be there, which means we often have to kind of make educated guesses about who we're going to be talking to and what they might want to hear about. It's really common for a conference to have multiple keynote speakers now. I like to look at who else is keynoting, and to the best of my ability, from what I can discern based on what those keynote presenters have done in the past, I try to do something that's very unique and also very contrasting to what else is being presented, so that I can be sure that you're getting something that is not going to be more of the same that perhaps you've been seeing all day, because like today I'm being pushed at the end of the day and I don't want to just regurgitate a lot of the same information you've been hearing all day. But that's how you end up with a guy with a mohawk and a flamethrower on the front page of the website there. I'm not a suit. I don't thrive well in extremely corporate political environments, and I definitely intentionally use photographs like that to really get that point across. And that's what I really want you to be aware of today as I present what we're talking about here. I craft my keynote specifically for the conference, the audience, and the city. I don't reuse my keynotes, so sometimes if you catch the same keynote speaker in multiple conferences, you'll be like, oh, isn't that the same one I saw in New Jersey, so I'll skip that. Every one of my keynotes is handcrafted for the place I'm going to be that day, which means they rarely don't work anywhere else. I like to combine rants of things that I'm upset about in the industry at the time with kind of local culture, so that it's really applicable to the people who are in the room. Like, who here lives in upstate New York? Just show of hands. Pretty much all of you, right? Yeah, so for example, like I keynoted GERCON. Has anyone been to GERCON up in Michigan? Yeah, I keynoted there a few years ago, and I did a really long rant where I told the story of a 10-cent beer day riot in the 1970s at a Cleveland baseball game, because Michigan hates Ohio. And then I equated that back to the second. It's really fun. So I try to do things like that. I spent a few days here this week and checked out what's going on in upstate New York. I went from here, I traveled west to Buffalo. I checked out Niagara Falls. I stopped at a lot of little places along the way. I broke into a lot of buildings, as you'll see later, or may have seen as you were coming in. And I learned a lot about the history, what's been going on here. Check out your Wikipedia page, because that just seems appropriate. And you guys are no strangers to booms and bubbles popping and exoduses and rising from ashes. And I really, really thought that was really obvious and really cool, and that got me thinking, what's coming up for us in the information security realm. First off, let's talk a little bit about me and how I might be different from a lot of the other people we've been seen speaking today, but also might be really similar. I fall into the center of this really weird Venn diagram here that a lot of people are only maybe vaguely aware of. We've got hackers and we've got InfoSec. And there's a little space where the two cross over. You know, a lot of people who work in InfoSec like to call themselves hackers. And that some of the most vocal hackers out there all work in InfoSec. And so we tend to think that it's all the same. It's kind of this line that's getting blurred these days. That's not really what's going on. Most of InfoSec is people who have that corporate 9-to-5 job. They punch in at the beginning of the day, punch out at the end of the day, and they go home. They may read some business-based news around what they do for work on the train here and there, but for the most part, it's not their life. Hackers and hacking, definitely a hobby, definitely a way of life. That's something that's part of who you are. It's what you're doing at the beginning of the day, and it's what you do when you go to bed. And if you do a lot of computer hacking, you may have recently found yourself working an information security job because, as we'll discuss in a little bit, those have become quite lucrative. And then this little scene bubble we've got in the center is that's the hackers the media likes to talk about. We've been calling this the scene since at least I got involved in it in the 90s. That's the malicious folk. That's the people who do things that aren't necessarily legal. They may not be doing it for malicious purposes. They may be doing it to incite civil unrest. They may be doing it out of protest, but they're definitely, probably doing things that are either breaking or skirting the law. I, as a kid who was brought up on stealing things, ended up in that scene shortly after discovering that I was able to connect a computer to the internet to find all these other people that are doing what I was doing what I was doing, and that was really cool. From there, I found a bunch of hackers and hacking that was just being done just for the sake of discovering and sharing information, and I thought that was way more cool than going to jail. And so I kind of grew away from the scene and more into the overall hacking as a hobby sort of thing, but still retained a lot of that knowledge of what was going on in those kind of dark corners of the early days of the internet. And then, as we'll talk about in a second, I eventually ended up working in InfoSec. And that's not a new story. That's a story you hear from a lot of hackers who ended up in InfoSec. So why would Rochester Security Conference asked me to come here to Keynote and tell a story you've all heard 1,000 times. I have to guess that it's based off of a lot of the other stuff that I do that isn't just going to work. I have been a massively active person in not only the InfoSec and hacking community, but just so many communities under the sun. I lost track of how many times I've given presentations. I love giving presentations. I don't charge for my presentations. If you can fly me somewhere, I'll talk to you for 6 hours. I don't care. I'm a dancing monkey. I'm one of the core staff members and a founder of the BurbSec organization, which is the largest information security meetup organization in Chicago, and I like to say the Midwest and possibly the United States. It's hard to tell because it's not like there's a big registry for those sorts of things. It's large enough that I get asked to speak at conferences a lot just about BurbSec and the formation of BurbSec and how to get a community meetup going that encompasses everybody, not just one small, targeted sect of, say, GRC people or something like that. I am regularly involved with ThoughtCon, which is a Chicago-based information security conference. Anyone been to ThoughtCon? I know you have. You've been more places than I have, I think. ThoughtCon just sold out this year in record time, in about a day. It is going great. I used to be involved with East Side Chicago, and then we now run BurbSecCon the day after ThoughtCon for no reason, other than it's fun. I used to be, and might still be, the president of the Chicago Urban Exploration League. We sort of broke up post 9/11 and didn't get back together. I'm still doing it, so unless anyone wants to challenge me, I'm the president. Come get me. Used to be a member of the Chicago Ghost Hunter Society. Those obviously go hand in hand. That was really fun. I'm the founder of a company called Ghost Express, which allows you to send a ghost to anyone you want anonymously. We're at Ghost.Express. That's fun and weird. Check it out. I'm a personality for a company called Warp World, which is developing software that makes it easier and more lucrative for people who stream video games to interact with the audience that watches them. Kind of creating an augmented reality version of Twitch. It's a software called Crowd Control. It currently works on Twitch. If you're into Twitch and you're streaming, check that out. I'm a host of a podcast on entrepreneurialism. It's actually an improv comedy podcast on entrepreneurialism, which many people argue is all entrepreneurialism is. So if you're into podcasts, check that out. I'm a regular orchestra pit musician. I do lots of theater. I think I'm the only guitarist in Illinois who can still play, or who can still read music. Because I keep getting calls and I'm like, I'm busy. Doesn't anyone else here know how to read music? And they're like, no. And that's because I went to music school, or I went to pharmacology school to study music. But of course, I also had to take some pharmacology classes. And this is, there's a reason I'm going through all this. It's going to seem like, bragging or something, but this all comes to a head, and it's really important because it gets juxtaposed against what I'm going to discuss later. Let's talk about what I've actually been paid to do, which might even seem more mundane, but really gives you an idea of I don't sleep. I hate sleep. I hate sleeping and eating, which is really terrible because I love food. And yet here we are. This is a basic rundown of what I could remember from my career path. You should see my resume. It's the most awful, 200-page. I need help with my resume. It's terrible. I started off as a licensed pharmacy tech. I was actually working in a pharmacy doing pharmacy things because I thought that's what I was going to do for my life. That was 1997, 98-ish, right around there. Said, well, and it's because I came from a family that did pharmacy. That's what my mom's whole side of the family did. I didn't know what I was going to do out of high school, so well, I was really good at chemistry, I guess. I'll do pharmacy. I ended up going to music school, actually, on a scholarship. So I got to take those music classes, and I got to go to school briefly for free until I ruined all of that. But it was like, look, I know I'm not going to get a job doing music, so I'm going to take these chemistry classes and do pharmacology, and that'll at least let me make some money and not die. While I was at music school, I got a job working at the university help desk. The IT help desk. And it was one of those changing toner and printers and swapping mice out. This is, you got to remember, 98, 99, 2000, right around the dot-com boom. Windows 3.1 was still pretty prevalent. 95 had been out for a while, but it was here and there. 98 was real buggy, and a lot of people didn't want to upgrade yet. It was back in the day. From there, I discovered, wow, I really like computers. And I knew I had liked computers. I had computers at home. I had friends, houses I'd go to and play with their computers, which was really making them do things they weren't supposed to do and figuring out how to get onto the internet and back then it was BBSs and causing a lot of trouble that way and going to weird meetups with strangers I had met on the BBS, which, man, my mom still doesn't understand that. She'll still bring it up at Christmas. Remember when you went to Six Flags with those men from the internet? And then I had to be like, no, this was before the internet. It was from the billboard systems. Well, you met them on the computer, and they showed you videos on their computers that they brought to the Six Flags. And she says it really sketchily. And what that actually was is I had gone to Six Flags where there was a BBS meetup with some people I didn't know, and these people were way older than me. And I'm like 14, and these people are like 25. These are old dudes. And one of them had a laptop that could play videos, and this is incredible. He could just bring it with him, and there was videos on it, and you could watch them. And he had recordings from DEF CON 9, and it was when CDC had dropped their back orifice. Who remembers back orifice? I think a lot of people here have probably been in InfoSec or IT since then, yeah. It was when CDC had dropped like their new back orifice version. It was incredible, and I watched this whole video at Six Flags instead of riding any ride whatsoever. And that was my first DEF CON. It was in a roller coaster park. And from there, I was like, I have to get to this DEF CON. I have to save every penny I have to be able to get there next year. I got a job at a retail computer service company, like building computers. It was Micro Center. There's like, I think, 23 stores in the country. Very small. I was there forever, as you can see from the very long timeline there. I loved working there. I was the manager of the service department, which meant I got to troubleshoot and build computers all day. And then towards the end, we were doing things like staging networks and stuff like that. The company would pay for pretty much any certification and training I wanted to take, which was amazing. So I was getting all of my Cisco stuff done there because I had surpassed all the A+ and the Apple repair things like that. I just loved it. And as you can see from there, I stopped working at the pharmacy. I stopped going to school. I had dropped everything because I said, hey, I'm making a bunch of money doing computers, because that's what we used to say back in the day. Remember when everything was just computers? When I do computers. Now somebody says that, you just keep walking. It's a bad conversation. I was making plenty of money. I looked like I had a career ahead of me. This was going to go somewhere. I was learning tons. I was getting certified and everything. I said, I'm going to do this. And I had to have a long conversation with my parents about, like, I'm going to drop out of school and go do this full time, because why wouldn't I? Like, school was getting in the way of my ability to have this career get going. Once that was kind of coming to a halt, I had gotten a job as a systems engineer at an IT asset recovery plant. And this is a place that literally recycled old IT assets that it gets sent in. You know, like you refresh all your hardware every 3 years, and all that old stuff gets sent somewhere to a dumpster somewhere. As long as you don't see the dumpster, you're fine. It came to us, and so it was my job to audit all the mainframes that came in. So I used to be a mainframe auditor, and everyone goes, wow, you look like you're 20. And it's like, yeah, I was auditing mainframes when I was 20. At that same time, I was super altruistic, and I thought that I was going to use the internet to solve the world's problems, and I opened up an internet cafe in the worst neighborhood in Chicago, like Murder Central, USA. Said, these people are killing each other because they don't have access to information. So my white privileged ass went and opened an internet cafe, and I took a bunch of equipment we were throwing away at the IT Asset Recycling Center. These are like, I'm talking 10 megabit switches, or 10 megabit hubs, like ancient tech for the time. And I'm taking it, and I had leased a space using my nonprofit, so I didn't have to pay right away. And we set up an internet cafe with old equipment. I got the internet in there, and we were just getting by. And we didn't charge any money to use any of this stuff, and we just sold like snacks and things to try and be able to make ends meet and pay the electrical bill. Every other day in this place, we would get robbed. We'd close up at night. I'd come back in the morning, and the door's been broken in, and half the stuff's missing. Now remember, this is ancient tech for the time. But these people, why are people breaking into an internet cafe and stealing crap? They're going to put it in their house? No, they're going to sell it. So every day, I'd go to the shop, see that I was robbed, walk 2 blocks down to the pawn shop. And they wouldn't go into the pawn shop because I wouldn't have to, because all my equipment was in the garbage can out front of the pawn shop. Because the pawn shop didn't want it, because it was ancient crap. You take it all back, plug it all back in, and get to work for the day. Wash, rinse, repeat. For a few months of that, I decided that maybe what this neighborhood wanted was not an internet cafe, that it had some more core problems that I wasn't solving by giving them the internet, which at the time was like GeoCities and Yahoo and a dissectable frog and like a dancing baby. It wasn't particularly useful, and so that fell flat. But I kept being a systems engineer, doing my auditing at that warehouse. They eventually began engineering their entire infrastructure top to bottom when they opened new warehouses, and I was doing everything from literally architecture to running the fiber to building systems that would actually do a lot of the automation which enabled the company to stop having to hire in, certified A+ people and pay them $12 an hour. Now we could get in people from the temp agencies that didn't even have to speak English and pay them $8 an hour, which at the time was still much higher than minimum wage, but it saved us a ton of money. And I had literally set the system up so the screen would either be green or red, and that's all they had to know, was be able to tell a difference in color. They could be colorblind as long as you could at least know there's a difference in which one's good and which one's bad. You could come work for us. Saved a ton of money, and that was an absolute blast, and I did that out of sheer boredom. It wasn't actually even my job there. That got me into a lot more intense network engineering. I started working as a contractor network tech for Westfield, the mall company. Westfield malls are like a global mall company. I was doing a lot of site surveys and network decommissionings and commissionings for a lot of retail stores inside those malls. Just on the side, you'll notice a lot of these lines overlap. It's super rare that I've ever had just one source of employment, just one job, and that's because that's who I am. Like, I love doing all this stuff. I love doing this stuff to the point where I just want to be doing it with every waking hour of my day. From there, I got laid off because that warehouse got managed into the ground, and I got hired on as my first information security gig, my first gig that had security in the title. It's really important to note the timeline of this. It's right around 2011, 2012, 2013. What happened in information security right around that time? Come on, guys. Why do we have jobs? Which breach? Target. 9/11 was 2001. Yeah, well, so right around then, we were celebrating that 10th anniversary, which is a weird, gosh, it's weird to think it was so long. Anyway, yeah, the Target and the Home Depot breaches, and we'll talk about that in a second. And that's really what led to me getting an information security job. And at the time, this company, was a Fortune 500 company, and they had this junior information security position open for 18 months before they hired me. Year and a half for a junior position. An entry level, you don't have to have any security experience position, and they couldn't find anybody at the time because there was nobody out there looking for these jobs. And here's me, armchair hacker, who's at home, writing viruses and taking computers apart and hacking into stuff for absolutely no reason. Absolutely no reason, just for fun. And then also knowing how to be a systems engineer and a systems administrator, knowing how to do network engineering, and desperately trying to find a job because those jobs were filled. Nobody was hiring for those unless you had a ton of experience, and I had all this weird experience. And I met a friend at a board game night, and he actually hit my roommate up and said, hey, do you know anybody who knows systems administration and IT stuff, but is kind of maybe into hacking, on the side, knows about hacking? And my roommate is like, you mean Johnny, the dude you play board games with every month? And he's like, I had no idea. And that was my bad, because I never brought it up because I didn't bring up work in these social situations. I didn't think about talking about what I do, or just asking other people, hey, what do you do for work? I'd known this guy for a year, and he'd been looking to fill this position for a year and a half. If I had just asked him what he does, my response would have been oh, dude, I love that stuff, and I could have had a job a year prior. My bad. That was me being bad at networking. And from then on, I definitely said, I'm going to be way better at this. And that's when I started BirdSec, and I'm all about networking. I've given countless talks on career advancement and networking. They're on my YouTube channel. I won't get into that. I went from there to work for an InfoSec consultancy, primarily as a penetration tester. But although we did everything from gap assessments, your GRC stuff, your virtual CISO stuff, but primarily my main role was as a lead penetration tester, because now I had been into hacking prior to working for that Fortune 500. Got all that defensive, corporate, the business, IT stuff under my belt, and then at the same time I was doing that, I was learning how to hack systems still. I was still into this thing. I was still big OSCP had come out. You could learn to be a penetration tester. And then we were also doing penetration testing internally, and that was amazing. So I got to bounce from there and go to this InfoSec consultancy. Then from there, I was doing it as a private consultant for a while at the same time being an ICS security researcher. Industrial security is terrifying. Industrial security is at a state right now, it's like 1995 back there. The average piece of equipment at an industrial site, the average piece of IT equipment at an industrial site is 19 years old. So is the software and the firmware on it, because they have a completely different mentality of if it ain't fixed, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And it's a nightmare. And so that made the job kind of easy, but also, man, it's a horrible way to live. Like, you just have to face this every day, that like every single part of our infrastructure is vulnerable to the most basic of crap you've ever heard of. And the only thing keeping it up is the absolute resiliency built into it. And then from there, I went on to work for a vendor called Casada, where we built a really, really, really freaking amazing thing of detecting automated abuse of web applications. And I would highly recommend checking it out. They have moved their offices to New York. I opted to not move to New York. And so now, hey, I'm job hunting. So if anyone wants to hang out with me all day for 40 hours a week, hit me up. And so this, like what we're looking at here, it sounds like, holy crap, this guy's done a lot of stuff over the past 10 years. But really, like, this is kind of normal. If you talk to anyone who works in InfoSec now and has worked in InfoSec for 10 plus years, you hear this story a lot, right? You hear the story of, well, I didn't start at InfoSec. You know, I started as a sysadmin. I started in the help desk. How many people here started at the help desk? 20 years ago, maybe. Yeah, lots of you. Certainly not. Well, how many people here started their InfoSec career in an information security job? Like, how many people came out of school and went right to InfoSec? All the very young folks. That's important to know, and you'll see why. I forgot that was in the course of money. Yeah. Yeah, who else was there? Show of hands. There's something that's happening now with people who are just starting, they're coming out of school, and they're getting InfoSec jobs right away. And some people don't like to use the term bubble. In fact, if you use the term bubble in any kind of economy, you're going to get a lot of visceral reaction. It's not a bubble, and it's usually because people have a lot invested in it. If that bubble pops, bad things are going to happen. I call what's happening here a bubble. And settle down. There's a bubble. There's a reason for it, and it's only like half of your fault. And so like 50%, it's not bad. Let's talk about the half that isn't your fault. It started with universities. Universities in the United States have a problem at their foundation. And now I'm not going to crap all over advanced schooling. Like, universities are great. They definitely teach a lot of great things. If you're into it, definitely go. If you're getting something out of it, stay into it. Universities have two goals. One, generate revenue. This is like I said, this is the US. And then job placement. Get people who graduate from there to get jobs. Because when you have a high job placement rate as a university, more people are going to go to you, which means they're going to pay you for that education. Without that revenue, without that recurring revenue, universities fail. Universities, for the most part, are a business. They need this to survive. In the 1990s, universities learned, discovered, saw that Reaganomics had created this huge sect of upper middle class folks who had a lot more money than they had in the 70s. This further class separation led to a lot more expendable income in the average family household, and universities began targeting these families to have them send their kids to college, because before then, it was extremely common to never go to college. It was extremely common to graduate high school or even drop out of high school and just go to work. And universities were like, how do we get these people to stop doing that? How do we get them to stop going into trades and start getting in here? And so they started telling our parents, hey, if your kids don't go to school, if they don't go to college, they won't get a job. There's too many kids out there. There's too many kids out there who are getting too many jobs, and your kid won't have one. You have to send your kid to the university. You have to. You have to take out a loan. You have to take out a massive loan. You have to tell them to take out massive loans. But you can pay for it, because look how good the economy is. But in the 2000s, the dot-com, who remembers the dot-com crash in the 2000s? Yeah, I really like this room. We've all been around. And Y2K, so universities use a lot of that to decry the self-education, where they're saying, like, hey, look, all this happened because all these kids who just had computers growing up are just standing up websites and standing up businesses, and they don't know what they're doing. This is what happens. This is what happens when you have formal education and a proper framework to tell them how to do it right. And that's not necessarily false, but they were kind of leveraging this thing and creating this fund to, again, promote themselves. And then in 2010, yeah, the Target Home Depot breach happened. And that was the game changer. The Target breach and the Home Depot breach were our 9/11, for sure. Like, that was what changed the game for information security as a whole. That's when companies started throwing millions and millions of more dollars into their information budgets, information security budgets. That's when they started having in-house information security teams, or any information security team at all. This was a huge deal, a huge game changer. And so the university is saying, oh, we have to capitalize on this. They threw together these hastily assembled InfoSec degree programs. I remember when I was working at that Fortune 500, 9 months after that Target breach happened, we were hiring more people because everyone was. And I had a guy come in, and he had a master's in information security from an esteemed university in town. And I said, what the hell? What university is offering a master's in information security? I'd never heard of it. Nobody had heard of this before. And it was like 9 months ago when the Target breach happened. And so we brought him in, and I talked to him, and I was like, what's this about? What are they teaching you? And they were like, it was pretty much, he took computer science, and then like, to get the master's in InfoSec, he had to take like it was like a Java class or something. It was completely weird. It didn't make any sense. And you take like these 2 more classes, and then you get your master's in information security instead of computer science. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And I looked into it, and sure enough, it was just, they were teaching philosophy, and there was no hands-on anything. They weren't even teaching like automation and analysis and critical thinking. Like, it was just like 2 additional classes in topic computer science. And you can call yourself a master of information security. It just wasn't working. But in the end, it didn't matter, because you could get that degree and you could definitely get a job because of the Target breach, because of the Home Depot breach. So should we be grateful of these breaches? Like, isn't that why we have jobs? Shouldn't we be happy that these breaches were happening? For now, like, definitely for now. Before the Target breach, it was common to leave a junior position open for years before filling it, just to make sure you found the right person, because like, you didn't critically need them. Now we're literally just propping the doors open and letting anyone who says they can do it come in. Like, anyone who says, hey, look, I learned how to use a computer, and I'm really into hacking, and I'm really into the information security community, can I come in? And we say, yeah. And we don't really vet them because we have 6 open positions, and we just let them in because we need analysts. We need people to stare at these logs, and we're not really scrutinizing any of them because I'm just going to sit him in a chair and he's just going to stare at the logs all day. And hopefully he'll write some scripts to automate that, but that's the extent of it. So like, how long is now? How long is that for now? I mean, pretty much probably our whole lives, right? Like, information security is projected to keep exploding over the next 10 years, right? So we don't really have to worry about it, and that's not really a bubble that's of a concern to us. Let's see. Let's take a look at the largest subsection of information security workers. These are the analysts. There are more analysts out there than any other role in information security. So by nature of that, we can probably use this as a good case study for how the industry as a whole is probably progressing. It's projected to go up 32% by 2028. 32%. That's huge. That's massive. That puts every other industry in the US and globally to shame. That's insane, right? So that's great. And that's till 2028. That's a long time from now. That's 8 more years. Let's worry about it then, right? Let's look at what that means in actual numbers, though. Like, these are the numbers that like universities are pushing. These are the numbers that recruiters are pushing. Career advisors at the university say, hey, if you like computers, you should get into information security, because if you want to be an analyst, like, there's going to be jobs out the door for you. Like, it's exploding by 32%. That's better than anything else we teach here. Why wouldn't you take that offer? Absolutely, it sounds great. It sounds amazing. the problem is that that number, wow, it's like, whoa, is really, it's only 35,000 jobs over the next 10 years. That's 35,000 jobs. That's not great at all. That's barely any movement in the grand scheme of things. That's half the population of the tiny podunk 2 square mile town I grew up in. That's nothing, that's nobody. It's embarrassing to call that job growth, but everyone likes to use these percentages to make you think that it's insane and huge and whoa, and percentages. Like anytime you see a percentage in any kind of statistic, look out, look at the actual numbers. So job growth is not as great as we think it is. What about the people who at least do have their foot in the door, the people we are hiring? Normal business pillars in any general standard corporate environments, they allow for this lateral migration to increase your skill sets and promote internally, like literally job promotions. You can work your way up as a sysadmin and then move over and become a DBA and then become like a lead database architect or something like that. There's a lot of, it's kind of like this Mayan temple, there's a lot of paths you can walk around and work your way up and build a well-rounded, robust skill set and get ahead in IT and have a really nice IT career and retire from just doing that. That's a classic methodology. InfoSec is not doing that. We have some weird, almost slave labor situation we've created where it's like this kind of inverted funnel. And the inverse funnel is normal in any IT pillar. The problem is the segregation that we have going on, that each of these realms is not connected to the other realms. It's really hard, really, really hard to move from one to the other, with the exception of maybe from an engineer into like analyst, but there's no reason you want to do that. There's too much untenable talent is one of the big problems here, especially in those 2 bottom tiers. We hired in security engineers who don't know proper engineering. We've hired in security analysts who don't know how to analyze, who don't have critical thinking, who don't know how to automate their jobs, so you're wasting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of man hours that don't need to be wasted. Yeah, they're cheap, but you probably need half the analysts you do, but because we're just bringing in anybody, we have to keep filling these seats, and it's not their fault. The schools that they're coming out of, they're only teaching philosophy. They're not being taught hands-on. They're not being taught business management, unless you get somebody who's coming out that at least is in an MBA program or hopefully has an MBA, but you're probably not going to hire an analyst with an MBA. Like, good luck. They're just not learning these things. They sure as hell don't teach critical thinking. Like that's something we're supposed to be teaching in grade school here in the U.S. and we've given up on that in favor of standardized testing. Adversely, like when we hire off the street hackers, people who didn't go through the formal education system, they're often sorely lacking in understanding of, or even desire to participate in like basic business practices, basic development practices. Like how many of your InfoSec engineers are proper devs? How many of them know Scrum and Agile? Like how many of them know, how many of them are full stack engineers? Probably none of them. They're probably engineers just because that's the title you give to the guy who turns the blinky boxes on and reboots them when they blink too much or don't blink enough. They don't know how to engineer. They don't know how to make these boxes talk to each other. That's a huge problem. Like you're an engineer, you should have this ability. It's like, all right, well, but we need these people. We have to hire these people in, right? We can't just not have engineers. We need somebody to at least reboot that blinky box. So, sure. Let's get them in here, and then we'll train them up, right? We'll say, all right, we'll get them in here, and we'll train them up. Might take 18 months. By then, they're going to be solid. Aside from that, machine learning and AI, usually I get a good laugh when I say those two things. Just it actually is getting better. It is affecting the amount of hands-on and manual work the lower tiers get. We may think that it's all a lie and it's all a joke, but the blinky boxes we buy are doing a lot of work. And they're automating away a lot of the really, really menial tasks that the base level analysts used to do. This unfortunately means that the analysts are learning less. The engineers are learning less. As these machines take over for even menial tasks, they're doing less and less, and by doing less and less, you learn less and less, and you just get stuck in the same position that you're in your whole life. That combined with everyone else in IT learning security as just part of their role, like we all say it every day, security is everyone's job. Well, it is. And we're pushing hard on IT to be more secure. That's why we have InfoSec programs in our companies. It's not to defend our right to have InfoSec employees. It's literally to make IT and subsequently the business more secure. And so as we do well at that, our information security teams do less because they have less to do, which is great as far as an information security and an IT program goes. It's not great if you're an analyst. It's not great if you're an engineer. It's not great if you're some poor student who just came out of school, got their first job as an analyst, thought they were going to learn on the job, and now all they're doing all day is just clicking buttons inside of your log aggregation system and barely even learning how to write Splunk scripts. All of this is creating this extremely thick glass ceiling at those lowest tiers. And that's where the bubble is. That glass ceiling above the engineering funnel is keeping everyone down there, and it's filling up fast. People keep pouring in, and they're not moving up. And that's causing a big problem. Analyst salaries are plummeting right now. These kids who took out an $80,000 loan to go to school and were told you're going to be making $150,000 by the time you're out are having to take jobs for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, which, in the grand scheme of things, is great money for your first job out of college, but it's not going to pay for that loan for the rest of your life. So are we all screwed? Are we all screwed if we're in that bottom tier? Are we all screwed as managers who have to manage these people that are coming in and will never learn anything and will never get better? Sort of. No, is that the answer you wanted? So like that bubble at those lowest tiers, it's causing analysts to be laid off in corporate downsizing because they can't prove their ROI. It's really hard to prove the ROI of anyone in information security to begin with, let alone an analyst who has effectively no output. Your job is to prove a negative, which you just can't. And you can say, look, I did a good job because I was able to automate all these systems and I wrote all these scripts that can detect all these things and correlate all these events and reduced our incident response events by 30% because I eliminated all these false positives, blah, 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 blah. That's something I used to do. These days, it's rare an analyst gets the opportunity to even do any of that, and that's the problem. It's hard as an analyst to get the experience to defend your own job. It's not your fault that you're not knowledgeable. Even if you did everything right, you went to school, you retained all the minimal information that school taught you, and then you went to get a job, and you're retaining every last thing that job is giving you, but it's just not much. It's not your fault. A lot of these analysts end up going to MSSs. Like, how many people have adopted an MSS in the past 2 years as part of their information security program? This is the managers for just doing like event management, incident response. A lot of them really expensive though. And I understand if you don't want to like broadcast what you're doing as a company, but this is, so MSSs are exploding. Like a new one pops up every day in this country. And they hire in a bunch of analysts and they do the same thing. They stick them in front of screens and they say, hey, just do this. And they have one lead analyst who writes all the correlation scripts. And it's an analysis mill that barely does any analysis. I've never heard anyone say that they absolutely freaking love the MSS that they've chosen to go with as a company. Well, I have, and they're only like 3 months in. Just give them a minute.
You'll do well in exam.
Yeah, or these analysts just move elsewhere in IT and do something else, which can be fine. At least you're getting somewhere. But like, we need good analysts still. How do we fix this? If you're an analyst or an engineer, do these things. Automate yourself out of a job is one of those things that everybody's terrified of. But the best engineer, this is an old saying, the best engineer is the one who puts himself out of a job. If you can, automate everything to the extent where you're no longer necessary, A+. You need a 500% raise. That's amazing. You'll never get there. And I think that's what you need to focus on, is don't worry about that. You will never automate yourself out of a job. The blinky boxes aren't good enough to allow you to do that. You should be focused on automating every last aspect of what you do every day. And you don't have to be great at it. You're going to see all these people out there giving talks on automation and things they developed and invented that are just mind-blowing. You go, how did you think of that? How is your PowerShell that good? I don't know any PowerShell. I can't do this. You can't be the best. Only one person can be the best. And it's probably, statistically, it's not going to be you. So just be the best you can be. Like, if I as a hiring manager sit around and wait for the best person to show up with the best resume, that'll never happen. What I have to do is hire the best person who comes to me. Be the best person that comes to the hiring manager. Be as good as you can. If you're not good enough for company A, you're probably going to be good enough for company B. Leverage your community resources. Find some meetups in your local community. If you're here, this is an ISSA meetup effectively. You're probably already doing that. Talk to everyone else about what they're doing at work for specific situations. What do you do about this? What are you doing if you guys are using Splunk? What are you doing for that situation? Like, ask these questions to get better if you're not able to learn inside your company on your own. And lean on your leadership to give you the opportunity to learn. Ask them to give you projects that will force you to learn something new. If you want to go to training, really lean on them to send you to training. If there's not a budget for training, lean on them to give you time during your work hours for self-training. That's something that's pseudo-free, that's definitely doable. And as leadership, do your job as a manager, as a leader. Do the things that I just suggested all of your employees now lean on you for. Set goals that are measurable and useful. Don't just invent goals because you have to do this assessment thing because corporate requires it. Set goals that are going to be useful to the person whose goals you're setting. Set unique goals for each of the people under you based on where their weaknesses are to build them up. We as managers have this problem where we're afraid to lose our best employees. We're afraid to make someone so good that they're going to leave and get a better job because we can't pay them what they're going to be worth if we actually let them get that good. But you know what? Most people don't leave a job because of the money unless the money is really, really, really bad. And even then, they still try to make it work. They leave because they don't like their management. They leave because they don't like their direct management. So if you make them like you because you're giving them everything they want, and really what they want is satisfaction and knowing that the knowledge of a job well done and that recognition, and they're going to get it all by you doing everything you can to grow them, not just as far as their skills path goes, but as their career path goes. Don't only set them up to be a better, automator, to have their Python get better. Set them up to always be moving towards that next tier, to go from junior to base, or junior to senior, or senior to lead. Your leads should be practicing to take your job over as a manager. A lot of the companies I worked at where I said, hey, I've been a manager here for X amount of time, and like move up to a director role, and they go, okay, cool, who's going to take your place? And if you don't have the answer for that, you're out. Forget it. You better have somebody groomed and ready to take your place as a leader. Make sure you're doing that. That's your job. In the meantime, I've been yelling at a lot of very specific groups up here, and there's a lot of people in this room who don't really fall into any of those groups. I'm one of them. Chances are, if you're here, you might not actually be directly affected by that, because you're probably already actively improving yourselves. You're already fighting that good fight. Like, you're taking time out of your week to come here and learn things and go to all these talks. And you look at the list of talks, and you don't just throw darts at this sheet and go, that's what I'm doing today. You pick the things that are of interest to you that you think might apply to your job or are just interesting. You're here. You're in this room. There was no description of the talk I was going to give whatsoever. What made you come here? My name? Well, all right, Johnny Christmas, that's gonna... Yeah, Christmas. If we have time for questions at the end, I'll answer questions on my name. It's a weird story. Yes, it's a legal name. We're actively proving ourselves, we're fighting that fight, we're passionate enough to do this. So, you know, a lot of us, whose inbox is backing up right now because you're here? Like, who's actively checking their inbox and like trying to manage it? Because you don't want to go back to work on Friday or Monday and just have this deluge of like, you're gonna have to triple up your work just so you can get through it. You're taking that hit so you can come do this, something you're passionate about. You're gonna be more indirectly affected by this bubble pop. Because you have to watch it happen. You have to watch these people get hurt by it. You have to watch as the people who did not train themselves up, who didn't learn as well or progress enough, kind of get sloughed off the sides. I did some research on Rochester, Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and you guys are no strangers to this. You have had a lot of economic booms. Rochester has an amazing history. You guys used to be like just an apex of society at one point. It was really, really cool. And then things happened. You know, I live right near Detroit. I watched it happen to Detroit. I watched it happen to my friends firsthand. Chicago, we burned down twice. We literally burned it down. It was the best thing that happened in the city. You're no stranger to this. And if you're here and you live around the area, you're probably a certain weird type of individual like me who does like weird stuff. Not necessarily stuff to like get ahead in business or further their career, but just stuff that's weird because you're into weird stuff. And like that's the hacking side of people. And a lot of us, you know, we don't want to call ourselves hackers and we don't think we're hackers. But like, what's that weird hobby that you have that you're super into that everyone goes, I don't know, he's in the basement doing that, playing with his radios. Anyone a ham radio operator? Ham operators? That's it, huh? Wow. Yeah, I brought it back, don't worry. I made sure it didn't end up where you didn't want it to. We all have these weird things that we're into. Like one of my weird things, like I mentioned before, is urban exploration. And whenever I go to a new city, I've never been to upstate New York before, I say, all right, where's the worst part of town? And what can I break into? And that's weird, and I will admit it. And so the other day, Monday, I've only been here for 2 days. And by the way, I put this whole talk together last night because I like to collect all kinds of information, and then the night before Keynote, I'll put this together. So if this seems kind of slapdash or unrehearsed, it's because it's good eye. Who knows that there's an abandoned Wonder Bread Hostess factory in Buffalo? Very few. Who knew that if you break into, we could turn the audio up on this too because it's really creepy because I have a respirator. Whoever the audio tech is. Who knew you could break into it using a collapsed HVAC duct on the side and climb over some barbed wire and get in? I reported this on Monday. This is me committing a crime. And that duct that's down there is what you have to crawl across to get into the building. I've almost died a lot. I don't recommend any of this, but like, ooh, this is a good old chunk. Like this is somebody's office. I found lots of really old computer manuals. If you have a good eye, you can spot the AOL 1.0 disc, which will be going on eBay. Yeah, and like, so it's pitch black in here, so you definitely have to bring equipment. There's definitely asbestos, so I have my respirator on. I have a little travel kit that I travel with. And I'll just let you guys enjoy this. Like this is, yeah, this is a blast. Who just thinks this is cool? Is this cool? Should I bother? Yeah, this is extremely dangerous. I can get cancer. I can fall and die. I can get attacked by someone in here and no one will hear me scream. I definitely broke one of my own rules of always bringing a buddy. You bring a buddy, A, because you get injured, they can help, B, because you might have to fend off drug addicts. And it was really cool, and there's some really good art in here, and I won't make you watch. I'll have these all on my YouTube channel as soon as I get to some good internet, because they're, this is all 4K video I like to take, and so we're talking like 100 gigs a run, so it takes a while to upload. Most of the place was super empty, but man, I just love this. Like, let me go back to those. These bins here, do you see what's all inside of them? Let me get up on them. Turn, no, that's all asbestos, by the way. Just dancing around in there.
Looks delicious.
So when I die, that's the dumb obituary I have to have. Look at that. That's all dot matrix paper. Like, that's all, man, there was all kinds of reports from like yeast machines to financial stuff, bins and bins and bins of this. This is what I do for fun. This is my weird thing. And so like especially when I was an industrial security person, we were doing assessments and my specialty was physical security. And I would break into these places. And is that the 5 minute? And the whole point of this is that we're something else. We're here at this conference because we care a lot more than most people about what we're doing, because we have this passion inside of us that pushes us to do things that other people might find a bad idea or just boring. Like, I definitely know people who would never want to do this, and not because it's dangerous, just because their response is like, no, why would you want to go there? What's in there? It's empty. That's dumb. And yeah, it is empty. They're not wrong. It's totally empty, and yet it's not. There's so many cool things in there. I walked around here for an hour and a half just taking pictures because I'm weird and I'm into something that other people aren't. And I get a lot of crap for it. And that's okay. Like, you're gonna get pushback when you spend too much time worrying about work because it's something you're passionate about. You're gonna get pushback because maybe you talk about work too often in social scenarios. You're gonna get pushback from people who don't understand it the way that you do, and don't understand that that's just a part of who you are, and they don't love that, and that's fine. Like I said, there's some amazing graffiti that'll be up on YouTube. The bottom line is, if you're following your passion, and you're here because you're passionate, and you're doing this because you want to do it, you're gonna be okay. As long as you stick to it and you ignore the people who tell you to go do something else. When you do what you love for a living, you'll never work a day in your life, as they say. And on a long enough timeline, trust me, everything's going to be okay. That's all the time I have right now. I've been Johnny Christmas. I hope this was helpful. Thank you. Questions if you guys want. Where's the snacks Smurfs? I had snacks. You can go ahead and hand the snacks out. I ran out of time. I had a really good story about when my company was closing down and we lost our M&Ms because they stopped refilling the vending machines. But I'll have these guys hand out the M&Ms anyways. I don't want to fly home. Any questions? You guys want to talk about literally anything that I mentioned even briefly? Yeah. Tell a story about my name. Yeah, so my name is Johnny Christmas, and it is a legal alias. It's on my mortgage, it's on a lot of my credit cards. That's the problem. So back when I was starting off at that Fortune 500 company, I was just learning various hacking and assessment tools like Nmap, and was just spraying crap all over the network. And it was a very old network because they had merged with like 3 other 30-year-old companies, and like most of the back end was mainframes and like hubs, and it was a nightmare. I was doing security assessments and taking inventory of things, and I would launch, who's familiar with Nmap in general? Who knows what a Christmas tree scan is? I was just blasting Christmas tree scans across this network. And then, from then I would also just blast every other time. Like, I was going like full bore because my whole goal is how can I get this done as quick as possible? I don't care about anyone else because I'm new. And that's one of those things that, like, when you bring in these off-the-street hackers or these kids from school who don't really have any, like, real-world experience, that's the kind of stuff you have to deal with as they come in and they're like, all right, cool, how can I get a 100% job completion in the shortest amount of time possible? Go. And they have no consideration for, like, not only how complex an infrastructure can be, but how delicate an infrastructure can be, and how quickly you can knock over your web server, which is horrible because you're an e-commerce company. And first off, why would even one computer be able to knock over your web server? But I did it. And they said it was my fault, and I said, it's your fault. Like, why do you have such low resiliency? That's not how that works at all. And that's what the new guy does. And so, throughout the course of this and that, like, the network got to be paged out when there was, like, some oversaturated network traffic. Switch got saturated or whatever, the network got hit. And they would look at it, they'd see what it is, and they go, oh, it's Johnny Christmas at it again. And they call it Johnny Christmas. It just stuck. And so I started, like, this was also back in the day. Remember when, like, you couldn't open your mailbox without getting 6 credit card applications in it?
I feel like you want to be friends with
Like
this guy.
free housing, trash. There's me crawling through the car where to get out. Like, this is the only entrance in the winter. So I started to put my name, Johnny Christmas, on all kinds of, like, crap that I knew was going to be crap, and I would get spam back with a name on it. And, of course, I started getting credit card offers in that name. And they said, one day, I was like, all right. You're pushing this offer so hard, I'll take it. And most of them didn't come back, but one day, one did. And I had a credit card that said Johnny Christmas on it. And it was attached to my social security number. Because I put my, because you have to put your social security number down or you're not going to get it. Well, you have to put someone's social security number. And that's an important distinction because clearly it doesn't even have to be associated with the proper name. And that happened. And then I did a couple more. And then I took out an auto loan in that name. And the bank was fine with it. And then one day I went to go get a job and they did a background check. And like on job applications, it says like, hey, are you now or have you ever been known by any other name or alias? And you go, no, that's weird. Who is that? Who does that even apply to? This idiot. I got a kickback on a background check. They said, you lied about having a legal alias. I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, it was Johnny Christmas. And they said, what? And then I looked into it, and I did a lot of looking into it. And long story short, I was legally required to report that as a legal alias that I was known by. And now I still am. And it's on my mortgage, because when you get a mortgage, you have to put all your names down that you've ever been known by. And there it is. So Johnny Christmas owns the house in Chicago. But because of that, I also have another video here. Because of that, I was able to very easily trademark it. So now my name, Johnny Christmas, is a registered trademark. And that's fun. Because now I can sue people to take my name down from places. Because I have not licensed them to use my name. And that's a thing you actually can't normally do, even though it's your name. So I argue that my name is more legal than anyone else's name in this room. And that's the story of Johnny Christmas. This is, who knows what this is?
It's a tunnel underneath dinosaur barbecue before you turn out the people.
You know exactly where it is. How many times have you been down there? Yeah. So, who's going to the VIP dinner